pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll move now to the consent agenda. These are items that are expected to be non-controversial in nature. If anybody wishes to take an item off for further discussion, they should make that known now. Marita, I believe item 4?
4, yes.
4 will be pulled from the consent agenda. Anybody else wish to remove any item? Do I have a motion on the balance?
So moved. Second.
Motion and second. Those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes on a 5-0 vote. Item 4, Supervisor Callaway.
It's good business that we're doing this. I appreciate staff designating where interest will go, since that's a normal question I have. I'm going back to a comment I've made prior that I would like a oversight committee, not a micromanage committee, but I would like a review committee to monitor how we're using these funds. And I know Measure J was very specific, and it's very specific how we're going to use these monies, but we're looking at other possible scenarios for bond money. I'm not saying that, whether it's community generated or whether it's board generated. I mean, I can think of the road fees, I can think of TOT, I can think of facility fees, all of which government just costs a lot of money and we're not keeping up with it. And I think we have a wonderful opportunity now to show the public that we do spend their money wisely. And this was supported by the public, and I'd like to see it reviewed by the public. How the format takes shape, I guess I would like to leave to the CAO and the sheriff to put together. I know we have a Treasury oversight and we have a debt advisory committee. I see this as a little bit different. Those are my thoughts, and I thought I'd put it out there one more time since it was my opportunity.
Would you like us to consider some addition to the resolution that might reflect that?
No, I'd just like you to consider it, and then it can maybe come back. There's the sheriff. Maybe he's, I don't know, but he's...
I was just standing up here in case you wanted to let me talk.
We'd be delighted to hear you talk on that subject. Any thoughts about oversight and citizen participation in it?
Actually, this board and the Sheriff's Department certainly have a lot vested in Measure J. The Measure J committee, which is a pretty diverse group of citizens in our county, certainly invested a lot in it too. And I absolutely agree with Marita. I would like to see the Sheriff's Office, the board, and members of the community involved in an oversight. And I don't know how strongly we want to put that they have any veto power or anything, but at least that they have their input and the ability to see what's going on with that money. And I think we deserve it, or this community deserves that kind of oversight.
Mr. CAO, any suggestions as to how we might constitute such a committee?
None at this time. We'll investigate and return to the board.
All right. Everybody okay with that on the board?
Fine.
That's fine. I have a question also, Mr.
Okay,
Chair.
go ahead.
On the interest, Dennis, does the bond itself, is there some legal obligation that we keep the interest in that trust fund that's set up for the principal, or is that a discretionary item before the board?
From what I've read, it stays in the fund.
I checked with bond counsel, and the interest follows the money, so it stays in the fund.
It has to. Okay, thank you.
All right.
So I guess what I propose is maybe the sheriff, and if there's board support for something like this, we've never had one, that the sheriff and CAO maybe look at how it could be framed without it being micromanaged, and i.e. micromanage the project, micromanage, and come back. No time frame on that, but before we turn a shovel. Other than that, I'd like to move this item. Thank you.
All right. I believe there is support for that from the board. Any objections to that? In that case, we'll proceed. There's the motion and the second.
I have one
Item
more
number
question,
4.
if I may. One additional question, Shirley. If the bond says the interest has to follow the principal, does the interest also then constrain, the spending of that interest also constrained so that it can only be spent for the construction of a jail, or could that interest be used to help staff a new jail until we catch up with the staffing costs?
It is for the construction of the facility.
So
It's
the
not
interest
for-
has to be constrained also.
Right.
Thank you.
Any other questions before we proceed on the motion? Those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Item 4 passes on a 5-0 vote. We now move to public comment. These are comments on items not on the agenda with allocation of 5 minutes per person and up to 15 minutes per topic. Please announce your name and
Gary
proceed.
Caldwell,
It's not Wednesday
Valley
night,
Springs.
Gary.
I know. I even come on Tuesdays. Thank you. I know the board is well aware that I have expressed concern at previous meetings about the public's access to public documents in the county, and I just want to express quickly a compliment to one of your staff. Notwithstanding the fact that the board increased the duplication fees from 25 cents to 50 cents a page, you have a person working in the Human Resources Department. Her name is Loretta. Was very helpful to me, and I do appreciate that. On another matter, was really why I'm here. I just want to compliment your staff. I read in the newspaper, local newspaper, that last week that County Council offered legal advice regarding a sign in Murphy's. And I don't know if you know or not, but well, some of the members of the board know that I've been frustrated in that the board makes little use of council's advice or asks for council's advice or opinions during the board meetings, even though much of what you do can have legal implication, much of the action you take. And it seems like that Mr. Jones, who I assume has got expertise in a lot of different areas, sits here for sometimes 4, 5, 6 hours, and the board rarely utilizes his advice or asks for his advice. And I'm sure he'd rather be productive somewhere else if he's not going to be offering advice to the board. In this particular matter, according to the newspaper regarding the sign in Murphy's, that there were 2 members of the board who not only questioned the advice or opinion of council, but then voted contrary to it later on. And, you know, if you're going to waste money with someone just sitting here and his time when he could be doing something else, and again, I'm sure Mr. Jones would rather be doing something else, and if you're not going to take his legal advice, you know, it's a further waste of money. And particularly the 2 members who voted against the advice of council, you know, are, as far as I know, are not attorneys. And you may get, because of actions like this, if in fact the board takes action contrary to the advice of council, then you may trigger litigation, it may result in an award, and in that case, you may be responsible, those members of the board may be responsible personally when you go against the advice of county council who's giving you legal advice. I'm not talking about policy advice, I'm talking about legal advice. So I would urge you have the expertise here, I would urge you to make use of it, particularly when there is any kind of a legal question, or maybe a legal question. I urge you to take advantage of a person with expertise. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. Would anybody else like to speak under items public comment?
It's almost a sure thing. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I am glad to see that the sheriff and other officers are here today because, one, I always compliment their service to the community, but also because recently in various publications where letters to the editor have been printed, you all and the planning department and every developer in the county, and apparently all those who disagree, have been named as being either lazy, uncaring, or corrupt. So I'm glad the sheriff is here to protect the community from the Board of Supervisors this morning. Thank you.
Would anybody else like to speak under items not on the agenda?
I'm here for some fun stuff. I'm Donna Shantz, and I want to invite the supervisors and the community to two wonderful events. The Calaveras Grape Stomp and Street Fair, 15th Annual in Murphy's Park, and I'd love to see a challenge of the supervisors in a heat. I think that would be cool. The other is a little bit more elegant event, the Taste of Calaveras, hosted by the Angels Camp Business Association, and it's a celebration of wine, food, and culture of Calaveras County. And it's to promote and premiere all of the Calaveras wineries, restaurants, caterers, artists, and musicians. And our supervisor, Russ Thomas, will be performing that day. So I'd love to see all of you there, and I have some information here for you.
Thank you. Other public comment?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Board of Supervisors. I'd like to follow up a little fun with a little money. I'd like to congratulate the community of Valley Springs. We just got a letter notifying us yesterday that we were successful in our grant application for Valley Springs Community-Based Transportation Planning Grant in the amount of $204,000, together with the matching funds from the Council of Governments. Total project cost is $250,000. So congratulations, and I know that there's some folks here from Valley Springs. It was a monumental effort and well worth it. Following good news comes more good news. The Council of Governments was also successful in a grant application to prepare the short-range transit plan for the transit system to the tune of $45,000. And all told, over the last couple of years, that amounts to almost $750,000 in grants that we have been successful in obtaining for the benefit of the county. So I just wanted to pass that good news forward to you.
Just keep those cards and letters coming, Tim.
Thank you. I know what heroics went into getting that grant in, and I do appreciate everybody's role in that. As I recall, Supervisor Claudino himself actually kept the post office open an extra few minutes just to oops, well, never mind. We've got the money now. It's okay.
Of course, that is pending approval of the state budget, but we expect that to be coming.
Oh, dear.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. McSorley, could you elaborate on what will be done with these $250,000 of the funds?
Well, actually, it's very similar to the grants that we've received for the communities of Arnold and San Andreas, and very generally speaking, they're under the Community-Based Transportation Planning Grant title. And with those, you can look at a number of issues, all the way from land use as it relates to transportation, if you want to use the term smart growth types of principles. So it's actually a fairly broad definition, and that will be a little bit further defined once we assemble the steering committee and engage a consultant and the community into how we're going to move forward.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. Anybody else wish to speak under public comment?
Excuse me, can I say something?
Of course.
I can't stand it. Joyce Teckle, Yahoo.
It might not have seemed at the time that all the blood, sweat, and tears were worth it, but of course, from this perspective, it was. All right. We now are moving on to, actually, let me announce something that I neglected to announce at the opening of the meeting. These would be the results of the closed session held at the meeting of September 2nd. Closed session pursuant to Government Code 54956.9, conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation, which was Hartsock versus County. Case number CV33932 was canceled. So that's the announcement for today. We now move to item 8, discussion and possible action regarding general plan update, board input and direction to staff regarding draft issues and opportunities report, and the draft working vision statement and guiding principles document. As you may recall, our last meeting on the topic was in the Calaveras High School gym, and because the document had just come out and a number of comments were made regarding the need to study it further and have an opportunity to react in a more organized way, that we said that we'd allow for this meeting to take place at a future date and open it for further comment and kind of hone the document if it is the wish of the board. So I guess we'll have a presentation followed by some public input, followed by board response and reaction.
Mr. Chairman, actually, if you will remember, just slight variation on memories here. From our August meeting, the first one, we received, about 3.5 or 4 hours of presentation from the public as the overview of this first piece of the issues and opportunities. At the end of all of those received inputs, the board's turn was next, and because of the duration and the late hour, the board substantially said, we'll take a pass and come back and tell you what we think after we've had a chance to consider everything we've heard, as well as all the written material. Today, that is our purpose and intent, is to receive the board's input. You have received from us 2 additional documents. One was from the Calaveras, Our Children, Our Communities. It is again discussing the issue on topic 8, which is social infrastructure. And I believe under Mike Miller's signature, you have received a document again discussing a little bit further some of the transportation issues. And if you have questions, less so about the former, more so on the latter. If you have questions, I know that Mr. Miller from Public Works is here, and he can certainly address this.
Bob, I don't have a document from my
I thought it was my understanding it had been passed out to you already. So,
well, let's check and see what we've got. Okay. Do you have extra copies of the Miller document?
Yeah. Okay. Give me just one moment, and I'll get some. I can get some copies. Maybe we'll bring that back to you.
I think he's going to get some, actually.
Going to get some, or he has some?
Okay. We can get to that in just a moment. Okay, that's a little bit down the agenda, so we'll make sure you have those also. As you are aware, we have been taking extensive public input through this process. This is a step along that way, and from the input we have received from all members of the public and your input today, we will send our consultants back to work to begin working on the alternatives section of the general plan. The alternatives and the actual goals and policies are the heart of this general plan that we will be bringing to you. We're hoping to have the alternatives to you. The consultant is saying November. I'm pushing. We're trying to get a little bit shorter time frame than that, so we'll negotiate on that little deal some more. but we're trying to make sure that we keep on track and move forward as rapidly as possible. So Rick is here. Mr. Keller is with the firm of Mintier and Harnish. They've changed their names, but it's still our original contract, so we won't hold that against them. They are going to go ahead and give you an overview of those topics that we are specifically asking your input on, and I'll turn it over to him at this point.
Thank you, Bob. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Again, I'm Rick Keller with the planning firm formerly known as Mintier & Associates. We're now Mintier Harnish as of September 1st. And I have with me Jessica Schwartz from our firm as well, and she's been closely involved in the project. So again, we received hours of public input regarding the draft working vision statement, the guiding principles, and the issues and opportunities report meeting in August. And we're looking to hear from you. We presented a series of 4 questions, and I'll go through those again that we're looking to get feedback from you today. And just to remind you about the report structure for the issues and opportunities report, there are 8 countywide topic areas that we cover in the report, and under each of those there are 1 or more issues and opportunities that are covered, and then under each topic area there are a series of key policy questions. And again, today we're not looking for answers regarding those key policy questions that are in the Issues and Opportunities report, but we do want feedback to make sure that we are asking the right questions. So to just hopefully make that clear. This is the final wrap-up of this phase of the general plan update, the Issues and Opportunities phase. We're moving into, and we've done some preliminary work in the last 2 months on the alternatives phase, and we'll be developing a series of alternatives, three or more land use and policy alternatives for discussion by the general public and ultimately for decision by the board for the selection of a preferred alternative. And after that, we move into the goals and policies phase, in which we develop goals and policies that are intended to bring the preferred alternative into So the 8 major topic areas that are in the Issues and Opportunities report, and we covered these in more detail last time, so I'm just going to just briefly flip through these. 8 major topic areas: community planning and open space protection. Topic 2, economic development, opportunities and markets. Topic 3, infrastructure capacity, financing and maintenance. Topic 4, transportation and mobility. Topic 5, public health and safety. Topic 6, housing affordability and diversity. Topic 7, county government operations. And finally, topic 8, social infrastructure. And we'll just go through those and identify the issues and opportunity titles under those, and then get into the questions that we're looking for you to answer, and then allow you to discuss them. So under the community planning, open space protection, we identified the issues shown there, as well as the opportunities, tools and techniques for open space protection. There are a number of key policy questions we ask at the end of that section of the report, and a number of issues and opportunities relating to economic development. And under infrastructure capacity, financing, and maintenance, cover those issues and opportunities. Under transportation and mobility, and I don't know if they have the copies yet, but we do have a memorandum from the Public Works Department, which is expanding on some of the text that is in this section regarding transportation issues. And briefly to cover that, and once you have the memo, you can look at that, but there's more detail on the issue of insufficient road maintenance. There's some elaboration of the issue regarding the need to invest in infrastructure in existing communities before developing new infrastructure. There's the issue of traffic congestion on county roads and minimum road widths. And there are several additional key policy questions that were added based on input from the Department of Public Works. How can the county mitigate the effects of the development on existing substandard roadway system? How can the county plan for new circulation routes? And how can the county define or establish the methodology to measure road capacity, road safety, and standards of road development? Topic 5, public health and safety, recover emergency response times, flooding, fire safety, and air quality. Housing affordability and diversity, we're looking at the issues that we're elaborating on in the report, workforce housing, senior housing, and then the issue of county government operations, including funding. And finally, the last topic, social infrastructure, and we have some in-depth discussion on child care issue. And in your packets, you have a report that was submitted by Our Children, Our Communities, and they have added some proposed supplementary text to the Issues and Opportunities report to flesh out the social infrastructure topic, including a discussion of children and family issues, as well as child care facilities. And so you're certainly welcome to look at that. We have just received this, and will be, based on your direction, possibly integrating some of this information into a revised Issues and Opportunities report. There's also a series of goals and policies that are recommended by our children, our communities. Sorry for my stuffed up voice right now, and recovering from a cold. And again, that's we'll be moving into goals and policies development after the alternatives phase, but these are some initial thoughts from this organization in terms of what those goals and policies should look like. So the questions, and we presented these to you and to the general public at the last meeting, where we covered the vision statement, guiding principles, as well as the Issues and Opportunities report. And really, there are 4 basic questions, and we're not looking for the answers to the key policy questions that are in the document, but we're looking to make sure that we are asking the right questions, that we're covering the right topics. So question number 1 is, have we done a good job in drafting an overall vision for Calaveras County for the next 25 to 30 years in the draft working vision statement and the guiding principles? And again, that document is the one-page document where we have the working vision statement at the top and a series of guiding principles. I think there are 12 of those overall that we covered, that were based on the input that we received from the workshops in the previous round, as well as input from county staff and directly from the board. And question number 2, have we done a good job in listing, categorizing, and describing the most significant issues and opportunities and key questions for land use over the next 25 to 30 years in Calaveras County? And then question number 3, are there issues and or opportunities that are missing or that have not been characterized correctly? And again, we do have some additional feedback regarding the transportation topic and regarding the social infrastructure and child care topic, and as well as the input that we received from the public in the last meeting. And topic number 4, which of the issues and opportunities are going to be the most important or demand the most attention as part of the general plan update? So these are the questions that we're looking for as the basis of your discussion this morning. And I'm available to answer any questions, but I'd like to really turn it over to you.
All right, any questions to start off from the board? All right.
Let me ask a question. On your item number 1, do we have a new vision and guiding principle statement? Because I have not received it.
It was
In the one
the one that had been
handed
provided to you previously, and I may have made one of those.
Okay, so we're going off the old one?
The one we gave you.
Okay, then that one did not incorporate any of the comments from the board or the public at the meeting at Calaveras High School?
No, that was the end result, and all of their comments, together with yours, we will move forward, yes. So that was, we have not revised those statements. It was to receive input on those statements.
Okay, so we don't have a revised statement to review as far as number one is concerned?
No, you would have just the information we provided to you originally.
Okay.
It would be revised pending the outcome of today's.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. All right, I do understand that we have comments, I think, relating to the OCOC document, that there are people here who wish to explain that. Are there such people in the room?
Good morning. I'm Karen Pekarsik. I am the director of First Five Calaveras, and depending on which day it is, I'm either co-chair or vice chair. Mike and I can never get it straight, with Mike Kriletich for OCOC. Mike Kriletich is our chief probation officer, and he and I share responsibilities for our children, our community. Our children, our community has been meeting since 2002, before it had a name, when it was in the needs assessment phases, and then following that it's met virtually monthly for the last several years. We have representation from a range of organizations in the county, several community volunteers. We've had a Board of Supervisors member present most of those meetings. At the August 5th meeting, we requested the opportunity to suggest some revisions to issue number 8, which addressed social infrastructure. And the one specific piece that it cited as an issue is child care facilities, and we're requesting that that be broadened a little bit to include children and family issues which impact land use. That's drawn off of the input from the 10-year master plan for Calaveras County children and youth that was developed as a result of extensive needs assessment. We've been coming forward to meetings and consistently referencing that document. That was a result of many, many focus groups and town hall meetings. It's a pretty comprehensive document that we feel has a very good connection and integration to the general plan. And you'll see in the information that we gave you just some considerations for how some of the strategic elements that address the needs of children and families would mesh well with the elements, required elements in the general plan when you get there. But for the time being, what I'd like to ask you to consider is including a section. We've asked for some, I've given a recommendation for some rewrites because some of the characterizations of how the master plan and First Five's role and other organizations' role weren't entirely accurate. But more than that, what I'd like to have you consider is not just referencing child care facilities, but also looking at children and family issues. There's a range of needs in that area that aren't specific to child care facilities, building and development. They include work and vocational training, which is needed by families so that they can be able to care and meet the needs of their children. We've got a significant population of parents right now who are struggling in jobs that are not providing a living wage, and the result is our children aren't getting the supports even at home that they need. We're seeing the impacts on all of our county services and community-based services. Another issue would be planning across resources, where resources are located, and developing an infrastructure for shared data and resources across communities and across systems. In the recommended language for the child and families element, we've listed the 6 areas 6 strategic focus areas for children and families, and they included leadership, where our hope was that decision makers would work to include the OCOC vision in strategic planning of resources. An element is facilities and activities for children and youth, so we're asking for a child and family-specific language to be integrated in with this opportunity to plan over the next 25 to 30 years. We've got some opportunities with our park and recreation, education, other facilities development, transportation planning. Family-friendly services is a strategic element. We want community members to know what services exist, how to get them, and use them through development of an integrated and coordinated information, referral, and service delivery system, which supports the needs of children and families. Child and youth health is a strategic element, and all of our planning around children's health and dental, mental, and physical health should be planned with facilities strategically located across the county, which also impacts how we plan our service access. Education and employability I mentioned, not just for children, but for their families, that we develop a continuous system of in-county vocational, technical, adult, and collegiate opportunities. Literacy, tutoring, and other education supports should result in children and families having the life skills to be able to participate in our community and support our economy. And then planned growth and development, making sure that community development practices and policies in support of children and families are in place to address affordable housing, and that's affordable housing from a family perspective based on the wages that they're earning, and transportation and infrastructure, and that new employment and job opportunities will be developed that families can access, and our youth, as they leave school, can access and stay in our community. So we separated this out from child care facilities because we felt it really met what the community at large had said through all of the efforts in the needs assessment and in developing that 10-year master plan, and we felt that the children and families conversation in the issues and opportunities report should be considered, as well as child care facilities. And the child care facilities language, we listed 4 specific objectives, which would be to encourage inclusion of child care centers at major job centers so that employees can have access to child care, to support the integration of child care centers within residential and commercial zonings, again, for those viable options for parents to find child care close to home or close to work. Support child care centers in all zoning districts at appropriate locations with adequate safeguards in order to provide needed service, again, for the community, but to make sure that they're safe and accessible for kids and families. And to put them close to job centers, recognizing that child care near a parent's place of employment reduces absenteeism, improves employee morale, and allows parents to retain their jobs. And we've also referenced, and I believe you'll be given a copy, if you haven't already received it, a copy of the Child Care Economic Impact Report, which indicates that child care in this county generates over $6 million in revenue and economic activity. So it's a very significant part of the community's economic base, and it reflects, the need is reflected in this report, and it will impact the planning that you're about to do with the general plan. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
I just want to be clear that what I believe your comments referred to question number 3, which is sort of expanding the scope of item 8 in this. And I want to understand that you're talking about replacing the current item 8 with the language on your pages 4, 5, and 6. Is that the essentials of this presentation?
That's what we're asking. It would replace the language and include the child and families issues, and by replacing it, it corrects some of the references to to how these were determined to be important.
So there were some errors, some factual errors.
Right. For instance, they referred to First Five as providing prenatal services and other services. Every First Five is different throughout the state. I'm not sure where that information was obtained. This First Five in our county, while we would love to be able to provide prenatal services, we can't afford to do that, and we have no labor and delivery facilities in our county, so it makes it a little tricky. But our county emphasizes early child care and education. We aren't able to provide prenatal services, so it just triggered that there were some factual corrections that needed to be made.
All right, so this corrects the factual errors and expands the scope.
Correct.
Thank you. Any questions?
Just procedurally, how are we going to manage today? Do we need to?
My expectation was that we would hear from, I understand there were a couple of organizations that had specific comments and prepared documents and wanted to hear from them and then move it to the board to determine what we do next in answering these questions.
Mr. Chairman, we would suggest that this is not a matter of adopting this language as a matter of this is the exact language. It's certainly receiving it as clarification and something that be moved to the consultants in order to assure that we are addressing the issues, perhaps in different locations, but make sure we have the issues addressed.
Right. I don't expect that we'll be writing documents here in this meeting. What we're going to be, I certainly hope not, although we've tended that way sometimes. What we're trying to do is answer these questions clearly. After hearing from specific, for instance, next we would be hearing from Public Works because they have comments about transportation roads. Right. So we would hear that input, and then we'd move to instructing staff as to how to relate to that and anything else that might be on our minds.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions for Ms. Picardsi? Thank you very much. I would now call, actually, I'm going to be calling on a couple of people. We do have the document from Public Works.
You all have that one now.
Mike Miller, would you like to step forward and let us know your thoughts on this?
Good morning. Sorry for the delay. I was free for the first 3 copies, and they charged me 50 cents for each one. Good morning. Mike Miller, Director of Public Works. I'm here today to provide some input from the department, some comments on Topic 4, clarification, transportation and mobility issues and opportunities. Robert Packinger was going to be here this morning, had a family emergency, so I'm standing in for him. We prepared this memo jointly earlier this week, and actually if you look under item 1A, I would like to read that because that's the crux of the issues for us in this county. Adequate funding for road maintenance is not expected in the foreseeable future. The county's maintenance efforts have been reduced to little more than caretaker activities. Available funding is insufficient to effectively maintain over 689 miles of roadway. One reason is that materials and labor costs continue to increase. Another reason is simply due to wear on the roads. As road impacts increase due to the increased population and interest in local attractions, the roadways continue to deteriorate. However, there is no increase in funding with the rate at which the roads deteriorate. The public, used to services available in urban settings, must become accustomed to delayed services. The issue for us is, frankly, the state, even this year, has reduced our funding by almost 50% on money that we count on to maintain the roads in this county. The federal level, same thing. We're getting reduced funding for all of our roads and highways. Calaveras County has had a road system that has been adequate for many years. But as growth continues, we can't meet the demands to bring the roadways up to the level of service they need to be. Some of the issues are the roadway standards themselves. I know I've heard from the board before that they would like rural and urban roads, and what I would call an urban and rural template, and our new road ordinance proposes both of those. That is not ready for you to review yet and comment and adopt, but it will be in the near future. We have issues with roads that are privately maintained through CSAs, PRDs, and other mechanisms in this county because we can't afford to take them into the public system even though they are offered for dedication. It's simply funds for us. As a comparison, I will tell you that I worked in 3 Bay Area communities. In one of them, one city, had 1/5 the miles we have here, and we spent more annually on sidewalks than you have in your road budget for highways and roads. It's a startling figure when you think about 1,090 square mile county, 689 miles of road, and we have less available to spend, and that's just simply the way it is. And in order to get to a point where we can give you a service level that's adequate for development, we do not have an answer for you. It's just money. I'd be happy to respond to questions. There's some other items in this memo that are more direct and as relation to the PRDs and stuff. But the crux for us is the fact that we would like to do it. We'd like to build it. We'd like to encourage development to come here, but we can't build those roads at this time with the funds that we have.
Questions from the board?
No, it goes to the bullet on well-maintained, well-connected. It goes to the reality versus the dream. And where should the general plan be?
There are other smaller issues, what I consider smaller, but the funding is the crux. We look for parallel transportation. We look at secondary access, all those things that are important in our development. But this is it. The bottom line is the funding first, and the rest comes later.
Yeah, a couple of questions. Supervisor Claudino.
Michael, under item 2 on this document, I want to ask you if I understand about a quarter of the way down, we talk about considering the physical characteristics of the county network, the cumulative impact from development is severe. However, when applying the definition of level of service noted in the general plan to roads with low volumes of traffic, et cetera, I have heard from various people, and I ask you to verify if I'm hearing correctly or not, that the method with which we establish levels of service, does that need some work, to put it bluntly?
That's correct. That's correct. For example, if we had a road system that's adequate for the transportation in an area now that's not immediately along a well-used corridor, and a subdivision were to come in, be proposed, and we needed to either upgrade the roads or we approved it at the level it was at now, that road would not sustain that traffic over the term or the time as development continued. So one of the better examples I use is, for example, Avery Sheep Ranch Road. You might have a development that would come out there, and right now I don't know what the daily counts out there are year-round, but they're probably very low. But just by the nature and the size and the configuration and the problems it presents, the added traffic from, let's just say, 4 or 5 homes isn't measurable enough to change your service level, but the cumulative impact as those continue to develop out there as the traffic increases, that road has to come up to a certain standard. And what we've tried to use internally is, if it met the minimum SRA guidelines in the state code for fire safety, it would have to be 2 9-foot paved lanes with shoulders and a vertical clearance. Whether the shoulders are unimproved and remain rural looking is beside the point of the fact that we couldn't get a fire engine in many places around a car. And if you think back to Old Gulch Road, you'll remember we had hundreds of fire vehicles back and forth on those roads, and there was more than one time there were traffic jams. So when we think about adequate service and we establish service levels, we also become concerned with our ability to move transportation quickly through an area, all weather.
So we're going to have to come up with something for a target for builders, developers, and land use issues with development of this plan. So
We do have these in the templates, and we will recommend to you, based on our road ordinance, the templates that you should have for development. But we also recognize you wrestle with the issue that a small development can't support building a public road for 3 or 4 miles at the standards that we believe are acceptable.
Other questions?
So as I understand, Mike, you're going to develop a more urban and a rural template.
That's correct.
And getting back to what Bill said, are we going to look at changing level of service definitions that are more in keeping?
The road ordinance that will come to you will have both urban and rural templates and definitions and service levels established, and you'll be able to, we'll walk you through those. We'll do a demonstration, and we'll give you examples of where you can see them in the community. But I'll give you another example as long as we're talking about urban and rural. We're getting a large influx of people moving to Calaveras County. I happen to be one of those people. I lived here part-time 16 years. I live here full-time now. People come from more urban areas, and they ask why we don't have street lighting in subdivisions. Some people ask why we don't have curbs and gutters and sidewalks. They want to go out at night. They want to walk around. They want well-lit neighborhoods. And that's an issue because some people just don't understand that we don't have the funds, and that's not what would be high generally on the community's list of amenities, which I would consider amenity when we don't have a road system that can be supported. But that's the change that we're seeing, and that's the, I have recently have exchanged emails with you about street sweeping. We don't even own a street sweeper in this county. We have a pull broom that we can clean up the roads, but we get requests regularly, and they are probably a reasonable request for people from Bay Area communities of trying to take rock off the road so they don't present hazards for bicyclists. And if I had to pick a road, I couldn't pick one road over any other in this county to keep the rock off of if I had a street sweeper. There's none that would get a priority over any others for a bicycle race or regular commute or transportation or anything.
So I guess we can see that in your budget for next year.
If you'd like to see a street sweeper in there, we could put it in there.
Mr. Chairman. Yes. Again, our emphasis is we are trying to get direction to our consultants so that we can integrate these concepts and start addressing these issues in our general plan. Clearly, we're not asking you to solve the problems today. The answers may become multiple, which is something we have not done in our current general plan. We have sort of a one-size-fits-all, and we don't have, I think we all agree, at least at the staffing level, that the system we have of level of service doesn't work as it's currently implemented. So we need to fix that, and our emphasis is, does your board concur with that kind of a situation, that what we've got or the direction we're currently using is not, in fact, the way we want to go in the future? We've identified a number of these. Public Works has identified issues to discuss. If you concur and you say, yeah, you know, those are very serious concerns we need to address, we'll have the consultants address them.
So are you asking, Bob, on the vision statement, highways and streets will be well maintained and well connected? Do we want to keep that? Is that the question you're putting out here?
That is in part the question. We recognize that the questions are phrased in such a way that they sound like the absolutes. And of course, the answer is yes, everybody wants the roads maintained. You know, our consultant is going to have to try to find ways of finding the balance between how do we maintain them, how do we pay for them, how do we determine where and to what level they are going to be maintained, and pull together a system for you to consider in that basic goal. One of the things, and I'm speaking for Public Works because I think one of the reasons they wrote the supplemental letter is, you know, we've talked all along that the backbone, the basic road system doesn't seem to be working well under the current system. But we really, I mean, we talked about other things in this document. We didn't even state clearly the obvious. So I think that was one of the reasons we're trying to make sure that the statement of the obvious, that the basic backbone is the piece that needs to be first and foremost looked at, is a question that we are posing to you. It's the same question we had basically from CCWD relative to water and sewer. Is that basic backbone your emphasis? And so far, at least what I've heard, and I believe the consultants have too, the answer has been yes. We're asking you today, is that in fact a yes? Do you think that the statements that have led to that presentation, that those backbone infrastructures are of preeminent interest and concern for your board, and we need to find ways to address them, is that in fact your interest and your direction to staff? Now, if you say something other than that, we're going to go back and scratch our heads, but we'll figure out an answer for you.
All right, I have one quick remark on this particular topic before you depart. I want to reemphasize the difficulty, both economically and aesthetically, of trying to have a one-size-fits-all schematic for this county. We are running into all kinds of conflicts and placing impossible economic burdens on small projects. I want to give an example. In McCollum Hill, we have an end-of-the-road situation. The road is 12, maybe 14 feet wide. Wants to put two houses where there once was one. We have a requirement that they expand right in town with a community plan that really calls for narrow, walkable roads. We call for an expansion that would cut down all the trees and the rock outcropping that makes the special character of that particular place. I think there's room for discussion on those things. We have two different issues. One is public safety. And I don't think that when we have 690-some miles of road that we're going to have every single bit of that be able to accommodate two passing fire vehicles. But I do think that we can build into the rural areas turnouts, hammerheads, other places that can accommodate an exit and entrance simultaneously in the event of fire. These are plans that we can work with our fire departments and CDF to accomplish and make it safe, but without burdening our own treasury or offending the communities that would actually like to keep some part of California looking and feeling rural. It's a tough balance, but I applaud your effort. If number 2 is really designed to figure out what a rural, safe template looks like, I don't want to have a two-tier, we're going to do good roads down here and we're going to do really lousy roads up there. But I do think that there are ways to maintain the rural look and provide safe egress and entrance. So I'm
cute roads.
Well, they may be well paved, but narrower than some other places.
We'll work on that definition.
All right. Thanks for your input,
Mr. Miller. Mr. Miller, don't go away.
There's one more supervisor with questions.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Mr. Miller, when you're developing these proposed templates, do you intend to get, for the want of a better word, creative or maybe emulate some other communities or municipalities? And specifically, I was driving around in Carmel. I think people would acknowledge that Carmel is a pretty unique place. They've got not totally different topographical situations that they deal with there, and they don't have a road that is curb, guttered, and sidewalks. As a matter of fact, they have an ordinance that prohibits sidewalks in Carmel. And street numbers also, but typically when you have a sloping condition here and the road is traversing across, they split the road so that they have a small landscape area in between. Why aren't we doing that? Why aren't we we make a recommendation in Public Works that in order to maintain the rural landscape around here, that we don't make massive cuts that require 17-foot vertical rock walls. Let's split it and eliminate, put one sidewalk.
I'll look into the Carmel. We'll have staff look into that and give you some feedback when we work on our templates. I'd be happy to leave for Carmel right now and take a look personally.
Okay.
But we will. We can look into those options. And the other thing that we're doing is I have talked to a number of engineers that have been here in the county for years. And I told them that when we thought our road ordinance was almost ready for you to look at, that we would let them do a peer review of it to give us insight and input from people that have been here a long time.
Perfect.
And I think one of them's in the back of the room. I just wanted to remind him of that.
Okay. And one other thing, you stressed at the onset here that it's all about money and revenues and where do we get the money. A number of years ago, the voters of California approved $40 billion worth of infrastructure bonds to build roads and bridges and stuff. And immediately the engineers started talking about, well, where are we going to get the aggregates? Well, we have the aggregates here. We have millions of tons of aggregates that are the residual remnants of mining, of previous mining operations. So, I mean, all of us have seen these hundreds of trucks that leave this county every day hauling thousands of yards of material out of this area to projects beyond our borders. Why don't we have a tipping fee? Why don't we have some sort of a mechanism that we can use that unbelievably valuable resource that's lying on top of the ground here? And granted, somebody else owns it besides the county, but the roads are tearing, or the trucks are tearing up our roads. Why aren't we making them pay for it?
DMV.
That's a good question. I can get you some more information on that, but I would say that in most part, they are using the state highway system, which is built to those standards, and where they have to access their facilities on a county road, and we establish an encroachment permit between the point where we join and the encroaching area. That's what we have authority over. And if their facility has roads internal to it on their property, there's really no impact to us. But I know this is an issue. I know in some communities they tax garbage trucks because garbage trucks carry a significant portion of the weight of the load on the front axles, not equally distributed on the vehicle. So they have special taxes. They hit them. Ultimately, the taxpayer is going to pay those taxes through increased rates or whatever. So we can look at things like that. We'd be happy to.
I would certainly encourage you to look at nearby counties that have, we need not reinvent the wheel here. But I'm having a meeting on this coming Friday with a significant builder who has already identified Calaveras County as a road builder, by the way. The Calaveras County as being the source of millions of tons of future materials for their beyond Calaveras construction activities. In the absence of any way to get revenue generated to here, some ordinance that sets it up, we're going to say goodbye to our aggregates and our roads will be torn up. So please work on that for us, please. Thank you.
I'm going to take that as a roundabout comment under item 3 up there with the need to not just complain about no revenues, but seeking affirmatively how to pay for whatever it is we decide to put into our plan.
And actually, that is one of the comments that is embedded in, if we could go back to the slide with just the 8 issues. Embedded within those 8 issues is that question time and again, and that's why I say we're not looking for the specificity generally of any particular topic, because all of these are integrated. The issue of financing of any and all of these is, that question is embedded all throughout each of these questions. So the real question is, did we get the right questions? Have we covered them? I think we would certainly agree with the added clarification that on the social infrastructure and how it gets integrated is a different question than just, again, trying to clarify the definitions of this part of the social infrastructure relative to the report from our children, our communities. Receive that as input. Again, the clarification from Public Works on the transportation, the very heart of growth and development in this county, together with the other information. Are those the right questions? Have the issues that have been presented to you framed the questions that you feel need to be addressed in the general plan, or are we missing something?
All right, and there was one last public input that I'm aware of regarding item number 2, economic development. I wanted to finish that out and as quickly as possible bring it back to the board, which is the purpose of this meeting, to be able to answer those very questions. And I think we are close to ready, but there is additional, topic number 2 from the last meeting, there were people who expressed the wish to hone their ideas and bring them back to us today. So I'm open to that, and then we will move forward.
Am I on?
You are.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, Supervisors. I'm Jim Conklin, the Executive Director of the Calaveras County Business Council. I'd like to give to the clerk so that she can give to you information that we have shared with at least some of you. When the presentation was made, I believe, 4 to 6 weeks ago in the afternoon regarding the vision and guiding principles, I made some comments at the public portion of that meeting. And I think the gist of the comments was really, and the gentleman who appeared before me, I couldn't have stressed it more, the whole issue of revenues and how Calaveras County pays the bills and how they maintain public sector service levels. The state of California budget has not been approved yet, obviously, as all of us know. We don't know really what the impact of the state of California budget is going to be on Calaveras County, but we do know that property values are falling. We know that tax assessments and collections are down. The Business Council has done a little bit of research relative to budgets, and in the Calaveras County 2008-2009 budget, you have a reserve of 2%. Amador County has a reserve of 4%. Tuolumne County has a reserve of 6%. So I think the Business Council, as well as other groups, are concerned about the whole revenue issue because it impacts schools, roads, hospitals, every item you can think about. And we're not only concerned about it, but we want to work with you to be able to help address this situation, much like we did when the Business Council voted to support the jail. Again, talking about can we use monies, interest, et cetera, et cetera. The whole issue of revenues is critically important to the long-term success of Calaveras County. That's why we believe financial sustainability needs to be in the vision, and it needs to be in the guiding principles of Calaveras County, because frankly, there's nothing more important in this county than the ability to generate additional revenues. So the whole idea of adding items to the vision statement, to the guiding principles, and also to the economic development component of the general plan, we believe is just extremely important. We've collected some information, and I want to compliment Supervisor Callaway for alerting us to Scottsdale, Arizona, and San Diego. We've made overtures to both those places. We have a meeting today of about 10 people to talk about the economic development component of the general plan. So we're really here today simply to say financial sustainability, or whatever phraseology you want to use, really needs to be critical into the general plan. And we would like to bring a series of ideas to the board at either your September 23rd board meeting or your September 30th board meeting, actual written ideas or suggestions relative to not only the vision and the guiding principles, but also the economic development component. So we're really here, first of all, to advise you of that, if we can get on your calendar. And then secondly, to ask that you don't take any specific actions that is completely, supporting the vision and the guiding principles, because we think there needs to be some changes made to both those. So we're simply asking you not to take any action of formal approval of the vision and the 10 guiding principles, and also to allow us to get on your agenda again for either September 23rd or September 30th. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so those are the three areas that I was anticipating additional public input. I'd like to bring it back to the board now to review the specific questions that you're asking of us and get direction to our contractor and our county staff.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, you're not going to allow any further public comment on the general plan update, is that correct?
If there's other folks who wish to speak, I'm not ruling it out since it is on the agenda. But I'm also reminiscent of a meeting that lasted 4 hours and went into the night and did not allow the board to take those things into account and then respond in a way that could direct staff. So I'm most uninterested in repeats of the previous statements. We do have recollection. There are people who have been working to try to hone their ideas and get them in writing so that we can bring that into consideration today. But if this is simply a reiteration of comments that were made at the high school, I would strongly discourage that so that we can give this board an opportunity to actually make some decisions and move forward.
In my case, Mr. Chairman, I spoke on county government operations. I don't know if you recall
Yes,
that.
I do recall that.
And today, if I could, and I'll try to make it very brief, I'd like to talk about facilities.
I would welcome that. Go ahead.
And if you refer to or look at page 33 of the handout that was given out at the August 5th meeting, just real quickly, it says consistent concern at the top of the page, county government operations, consistent concern county government does not have sufficient resources, i.e. staffing, facilities, and funding to meet the demands of county residents. Aging facilities, overlapping services, so forth. The key words there are aging facilities. And with respect to that, one of your guiding principles that have been suggested here is that development not outpace the ability of county government to provide adequate services and infrastructure. And in past development proposals before you, as most of these issues are land use related, almost all of them are land use related. You had developments in the past that have had an impact where mitigations were not provided. And you were advised by Mr. Selman, and correctly, that CEQA only provides for the mitigation of impacts to the physical environment. Now, you've had comments relative on land use approvals relative to fire protection and law enforcement, certainly, and libraries, animal control, you name it. And one of the things with respect to fire protection, it looks like Assemblyman Dave Jones' bill is going to take care of that, which will require that the Board of Supervisors get certification from fire districts that they have the resources to provide fire protection before the board can approve a development. However, law enforcement doesn't presently enjoy that same benefit in that legislation. And I just want to point out that the board approved a development north of Vista del Lago about 3 or 4 months ago when law enforcement was brought up, the impact of law enforcement brought up, and Mr. Solomon at that meeting told you that you only had to mitigate, I shouldn't say only, that CEQA only provides that you mitigate impacts to the physical environment. You can mitigate impacts to law enforcement, to fire protection, to libraries, animal control. You can mitigate those. You're not precluded from it as long as you create the nexus, or your planning staff creates a nexus that allows you to do that. And I'm particularly concerned about the facilities fee, non-existent facilities fee in this county. Amador County, which I'm sure you're aware of, and I don't like to use adjacent counties normally as an example, they have a $7,900 per residence facilities fee. We all know that you're going to have to replace buildings, you're going to have to expand buildings, you're going to have to provide new buildings. I mean, you have people standing in the hallways doing business right now at a window. If you, and I made some rough calculations, if you provided in 1992 when you adopted the, well, maybe not this board, well, maybe Supervisor Tryon was there in 92, I guess. When you adopted the ordinance providing for facilities fees and no numbers were installed, if you had to put in a fee of less than half, so let's say $3,000, and that began in 98, for 10 years you would now have roughly, and again my calculation based on building permit issuance numbers I got, you'd have roughly $20 million. More than enough to offset any shortfall in the jail construction, and more than enough to provide for an animal control facility also. And I just wanted to show you with regard to jail. I'm sure some of you have seen this. This is the front page of the Sacramento Bee Sunday, and it says, "Jails fill up, inmates pour out." And in talking with some people, I discovered that, unfortunately, there are people who are willing to give out public information still in this county. 2007, 249 people were rearrested during the time that they should have been serving in jail. Rearrested. Had they been in jail, they wouldn't have been committing the second crime. The other thing that's really scary that I found out was that during 2007, 68 felons were cited and released because the jail was at capacity. Felons, 68 felons. Facilities need to be improved. You have the ability to do that. You have the ability to mitigate the impacts of new development across the board, both in the government code and the health and safety code with respect to fire and police protection. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, I would ask everybody to try to be specific to the issues before us today and to give the board an opportunity to respond to the now 5.5 hours of input that we've already received on this bus.
Actually, I would like to correct that misperception. We did sit on the bleachers at Calaveras High School for 4 hours from 1:30 to 5:30 on August 5th, but the first 2 hours of that were about the water element, 15 minutes of it was a break, and a half an hour of it was the presentation by Mintier and Associates. So we have not sat through hours of public input. In fact, I just counted, because I have my notes with me, only 13 people spoke on this issue, so it's not like we've been overwhelmed.
I certainly stand corrected on that.
Mickey Williamson, and I'm speaking today on behalf of the Calaveras Planning Coalition, and I will abbreviate my remarks. I was actually asked to make some points by our facilitator, Tom Infacino, whose plans called for him to be climbing Mount Whitney this week, so I'm here instead. And I am going to limit my discussions from 6 points that we wanted to make to 2, because they're ones that have been referenced this morning, and that is that we see this vision, which we think, in answer to the questions that are up there, this report has done a very good job of the things that it set out to do, particularly capturing public input on this issue. And so our concern, given some of the responses that we've heard, are one is that we think this report and its guiding principles puts us in very good place to get funding for these things. And so we really want to caution that we don't use the lack of funds up front to say, well, then let's don't even consider that. We may have to not do things because we can't find the funds, but we shouldn't let that be the reason that we don't consider it. I think we can either pay now for some things or pay a lot more later, and I think that's happened in our county. So we really want to caution not using financial feasibility as a reason to stop discussion, even though we do realize we have to find the funds, and we also are willing to help find those funds and help us get them. And the second thing is that these, the Issues and Opportunities report is very broad and is very lofty, and that's as it should be. This is the guiding statement for what we will do. It's not the end result. So it's too soon to narrow down and focus. This is the time to dream the dreams and to have leadership and to see what we can have this county become. So I will submit the rest of mine in writing and just leave it at that.
Can you also make sure that staff receives a copy for you?
Yeah, I'll have to make another one. Okay, great, thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Board of Supervisors, I'm Al Segala. I'm president of the Calaveras County Taxpayer Association, and I have comments that Our board has reviewed the two proposals, the draft working statement and guiding principles, and the general plan draft issues and opportunities report in detail. And it would take about 8 minutes to present this to you. It challenges some fundamental concepts that are interwoven in the general plan proposal, and suggests more attention to the U.S. Constitution, and particularly the protections of private property rights. So hopefully you'll indulge me in that, and then I'll present this to you. The review of the vision statement and guiding principles. I only wish I had a voice like Supervisor Thomas, and I really come across well.
You could sing it to us. CCTA, which is the Calaveras County Taxpayer Association, believes that the submitted general plan update proposals are excessive, overreaching, and in some respects unconstitutional. The GPU scope should be reduced to address only land use matters with the sole objective of meeting the CEQA and other state statutes' extensive requirements without infringing upon the citizens' constitutional right to reasonably use their property. For example, the draft addresses government fees, funding, promotion of small businesses, education, tourism, none of which directly relates to land use. On first glance, the document appears to be a statement of lofty goals and noble purposes. But what does it really mean? Since we are concerned about the expansion of governmental control and potential for abuse of property rights, we pose these 10 questions. Number 1, are the guiding principles really principles or subtle and deliberate obfuscations? The first guiding principle should be the GPU update shall adhere to and uphold the Constitution of the United States of America. Number 2, does the protection of open space, wildlife habitat, scenic vistas, agricultural lands, forests, rivers, and lakes mean that the owners of these assets will no longer control their property? Are ranchers and landowners obligated to provide and preserve scenic vistas, public recreation at all without compensation? Number 3, does having building boundaries limiting construction to existing communities mean that no lots large enough to keep a horse or a llama will be allowed? Is this smart growth? Regarding Senate Bill 32, Global Warming Solutions Act, a substantial number of scientists are questioning the validity of the carbon theory, which this law is based on. What if property rights are compromised in the name of catastrophic global warming, and then the theory is discredited? 5, how can land use restrictions promote tourism, or is it even worth the attempt? 6, are developers not now limited to availability of infrastructure, or is the general plan meant to be a no-growth document? Number 7, what is the need for riparian controls in the general plan? Are water rights and riparian protection not adequately addressed by other jurisdictions and existing statutes? Number 8, how will the GP resolve the issues of fire protection and logging? Aren't logging regulations, wildfire protection, not the province of the state? Number 9, how are education and healthcare deemed land use uses? Why are they included in the list? Number 10, why is government service included in the list? How does it relate to land use decisions? Our review of the key policy questions. The first part is the question, and then the second is our response to that question. Question, what is the appropriate minimum parcel size in rural areas that will discourage sprawl and protect open space and working landscapes? CCTA. Minimum parcel size should be determined by reasonable use of the land, not for imprecise and questionable political ends. Question, how can Calaveras County support infill development that offers a small town rural atmosphere and lifestyle in existing community centers? CCTA, infill may destroy the desirability of existing neighborhoods by increasing crowding, traffic congestion, and parking shortages.
It also threatens historic features of the Gold Rush communities. Infill should not be a priority in Calaveras County. Question: how can the county protect and preserve historic centers? CCTA: private interests preserve historic buildings and sites as a matter of economic self-interest. County planning is not needed to preserve history. Question: how can the general plan provide sufficient local control over planning decisions? CCTA: the general plan should be written as a performance document that clearly and succinctly specifies the minimum requirements for building or development and leaves the specific details to owners or developers, thus minimizing need for control. Question: how should county retain distinct community identities while stimulating growth and reinvestment in the communities? CCTA: first, community identity is an imprecise and subjective term. Laws, ordinances, and regulations must have clear, well-defined objectives to be generally understood and fairly enforced. Secondly, relaxed regulation will best stimulate growth and investment. Question: how should the county best provide uniquely community gathering places and recreational areas? CCTA: it should encourage communities, nonprofit organizations, developers, and entrepreneurs to provide parks, playgrounds, open areas, and meeting halls. A good example of that is Feeney Park in Murphy. It's just wonderful. Not a penny of tax money and not one word from a bureaucrat. Question: how can the county work with farmers, ranchers, nonprofit organizations, and other partners to preserve agricultural land? CCTA: the county can continue to encourage agricultural enterprises such as hunting clubs, riding academies, ranch hostels, etc. Question: should the county consider a transfer of development rights, TDR, program to protect open space? CCTA: as long as land use is more valuable in agriculture, it will not be developed. Development should be based on economics, not politics. Also, a TDR program would be wasteful, tempt abuse, and fraud, and would diminish property rights. In conclusion, CCTA believes that the submitted general plan update proposals are excessive and overreaching and should be reduced to address only land use matters with the sole objective of meeting the CEQA and other state statutes' extensive requirements. For example, the draft addresses government fees, funding, and promotion of small business, education, and tourism, none of which directly relates to land use. Furthermore, we believe that the new general plan and ensuing zoning ordinances should be simple, more concise, and user-friendly. It should be written in plain English, using only common words, with precise meaning. It should adhere to the U.S. and California constitutions. I have copies for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Could you also make sure staff gets a copy?
I too wish I had Supervisor Thomas's voice to address this crowd.
You could have it.
I wasn't planning on speaking today, but after hearing Mr. Segalia, I'm on the Wilseyville Planning Committee. My name is Mary Greer, and those are the very questions that I have for this general plan update myself. It's the first time I've ever heard anyone really say any of those questions or address any of those concerns about the general plan update. They're the very questions I have about it also. I've asked several people, and I don't seem to get any satisfactory answers about it at all. Thank you.
Joe Kelly, under item 6, housing affordability. Workforce housing affordability. I think perhaps if that terminology, affordability, is going to stay in this document, that perhaps then a subsection should be attainable housing. because affordability or affordable housing had a threshold years ago during the bubble of considerably high dollar value. Now we need to look at a lesser value since the bubble has burst and all the problems of collapse are going on, to look at attainable housing, and that should be also defined within this document. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I believe we're now ready to bring this. Does anybody else wish to speak before we bring it back to the board? All right, we will now entertain board response, again referring to the questions that are up on the screen here. What is your pleasure as regards instructions to staff and contractor? Anybody want to go first?
I'll go then. I guess my thoughts are the same as where they were at the high school. I concur with the Calaveras Taxpayers Association in the sense that there needs to be some recognition of private property rights in this process. We love to gather in a forum like this, and everything in Calaveras County is ours. And it's ours, and the aggregate is ours, and what are we doing about our this and our that? When in reality, ours is really just the government and what the government owns and what the government controls. That's ours as a collective. We may regulate to an infinite degree of private property rights and maybe to some extent too great a degree. But I think there should be some recognition that there is a private sector someplace in Calaveras County that exists, and it has a right to be heard, and it has rights that also should be protected from a takings. So I'll say that. I'll also say I concur with the Business Association. I think we do need a county financiability, sustainability policy. I'm not quite certain what that looks like. I'd be very interested to see what they submit. I'm not certain I will agree with it because all the revenue comes out of the private sector and government sector, quite frankly, whether it be local, state, or federal, has insatiable desires for money. And I don't know that you will ever satisfy the beast as far as having enough money, but I think we do need some better planning, and people like to compare us to Amador and Tuolumne, and the obvious shortfall there, the glaring shortfall, not that there aren't others, is basically sales tax, where we do all our shopping and or not all, but a vast amount on the Highway 4 corridor goes to Tuolumne County, and a vast amount and the remainder of the county goes to Amador County. I am interested in what Public Works has put forward, because I think the most important infrastructure we face is basically circulation and roads. And, we don't get that right, and we go to gridlock, and you can just forget everything else because we can't move. And, I was appalled when the board basically waived a legal access requirement. You have the Public Works Director standing up and saying nothing kills us worse than these 3 or 4 homes at the end of a one-lane dirt road with no legal access and no way of improving roads to county standards. And the board basically said, we want more of that, so let's give a holiday and let everybody do that through December 31st. And my bet is the board extends it, though I think that borders on insanity. I think we're also going to need to look when we get into policy as to the minimum parcel sizes, because that also feeds what I'll refer to as rural sprawl and a lack of basically any form of infrastructure that I can see. I am not at all in favor of your social responsibility issue. I do not want the general plan to get into the social welfare demands, whether it be, an affordable wage or daycare or any of the other social welfare programs. I think the general plan should be very highly focused on the infrastructure that goes with land development, which is basically roads, sewer, and water. I don't think we should get into social welfare, and if we open up an element for that, it'll be Katie bar the door, and you'll never pull another building permit because we won't be able to afford, no one will be able to afford a new house. It always makes me laugh. We have all these discussions that raise the cost of housing, and then we put an element in about what are we going to do about affordable housing. Well, we've done it. So those are my comments. And I just wish to emphasize, I think we need to stay fairly highly focused on land use issues and the physical infrastructure that goes with land use issues and growth, and stay out of the other issues, stay out of the social welfare issues. I'm not at all convinced that staffing levels for the Sheriff's Department should be included in the general plan, or staffing levels for planning should be included in the general plan, or staffing levels for public welfare, or staffing levels for anybody. And I don't know why one group is more demanding or deserving than another group particularly. So I think we need to, if we're going to get this thing through and have it be successful, I think it needs to be highly focused. It needs to be on land use issues. It needs to be on the physical infrastructure that goes with those land use issues. And it needs to talk about how we are going to develop, allow land to be developed for residential particularly, but residential and commercial development into the future, and what infrastructure is going to go with that, which gets into parcel size and one-lane dirt roads and the like. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Who would like to speak next? Supervisor Claudino?
All right. Basically, for the most part, I agree with what Supervisor Tryon had to say, but answering the questions that our consultant has asked us, the 4 questions that we started off with, I believe I can answer most of those in the affirmative as far as the job they've done. If I get the questions correctly anyway, the job, have you done a good job in drafting the statement? I believe they have. They certainly worked long and hard at it and received a lot of public input and been very, very adaptable to what this board and the public seems to want them to address. Have they listed and the key issues for land use? I believe so. Repeating or agreeing with what Supervisor Tryon had to say, I do believe that somewhere in this document there needs to be the feeling that we are concerned with private property rights. The thing that often brings that to conversation is principle number 2, I think it is, where it talks about open space, wildlife, habitat, scenic vistas, ag lands, and so on. Those issues fill this boardroom up with people who don't necessarily own those lands but want to tell people what to do with them. And when it comes to preserving open space and mitigating such, I would like to see the private property rights addressed there, at least to the extent that the public feel they have rights over others' property. And for me, such things as mitigated open space and or habitat conservation and that sort of thing needs to heavily be directed towards voluntary efforts. These people own the land and they should have the first say at what becomes of their land, in my opinion. And so these private property rights need to be recognized. The financial sustainability issue that was raised, I'm not sure that needs to have policies and specifics in the general plan, but those are the things that the general plan can address with regard to when we get down to policy making, what we charge people. They talked about, Mr. Caldwell talked about facility fees, and Mr. Conklin about funding this and that, and you can't have these services if you can't buy them, of course. And you're not going to buy them without the money. As Mr. Miller, the Public Works Director, indicated, we don't have any money to fix our roads. So what is the what is the most important issue in these, and that's the fourth question that they've asked. In my opinion, it is the land use, of course, but along with that, integrated with that, is the circulation. A prime example in this county that's been in the newspaper quite a bit the last several months is our Calaveras County Fairgrounds, which is a beautiful facility. It's the envy of many, many fairs in this state. And I know from being on that fair board for 9 years at one point that facility itself would be extremely financially viable and sustainable if people could get to it. Fairgrounds, they operate their budgets not on the fair, but on the interim rentals and events that they have. And this fairground is beautiful, and it's looked at by many corporations for retreats, for training seminars, for training venues, and so on, but you can't get there. And so if that were possible, I'm sure that they would have their financial pinch would be alleviated somewhat. The other one was, are there things missing, or are there things inadequate in this vision statement and guiding principle? Perhaps. With regards to the social end of this, in my opinion, this is only a vision statement. We're not getting down to policies. I think that the staff and the consultant should consider greatly the information submitted by not only the OCOC people, the written statements from the Taxpayers Association, and everyone who had something to say about this. The OCOC, Ms. Pekarsik, the topic number 8, that would be, I believe, with the issue of social infrastructure, is addressed under the items number 11 and 12 pretty basically. And although I didn't have time to really read through this, we just got it this morning. But I think those things should be, how shall I say this, in mind at the time we're constructing this general plan, and not that they should actually have the pages replaced in the general plan document, but those are very important issues. And I think they are well integrated into the entire general plan, and they should be considered. Topic number 4, addressed by the Public Works and the level of service. When we get down to policies and procedures, I would be strongly in favor of the what was discussed, the rural and urban road templates. It speaks to the issue that Supervisor Walensky talked about in a rural community, a small lane where somebody wants to simply put another home, and the whole value of the properties is their appearance and their location and the natural circumstances in which they exist. And I think we need to distinguish that from the urban environment. Basically, I think that the consultants have done a good job with their working vision statement and guiding principles. And just to reiterate what Supervisor Tryon said, I think the biggest enemy that we have here is the issue of rural sprawl. And I think most people, when they think about that or take a look at what that would be like, would agree. We want to, most people live here because we have these open spaces. I hear that almost every week in this room. And one way to control that is to do the development where the development should be, and not just spread it indiscriminately across the entire surface of this county. So anyway, I think you folks have done a good job, and I'm sure that you'll integrate what you've heard here today into your next document.
Supervisor Callaway.
Having gone to 3 of the public meetings, I think the vision statement does capture the essence of what the community groups were talking about. In that sense, yes, I think you did a good job in drafting the overall vision. I feel the general plan, though, needs to be very focused. Over 20 years ago, or about 20 years ago, we were challenged regarding our roads, and here we are over 20 years later with the same issue. So the comments that Mr. Miller made, I think, are very poignant because they're very real. We lose the concept, I think, of what a general plan is. We put the general plan together, and it sits on a shelf until it is needed for planning purposes. And then a developer comes in, someone wants to do a parcel split, zoning change, general plan amendments, the documents pulled out, does this fit what the needs are of the community, understanding that, as Mr. Selman has told us innumerable times, we should look at this document being 30 to 50 years out. I agree with Mickey in that lack of funds should not be the roadblock to discussion. And that's what the vision statement's about. Then we have to move on to what the reality is, and I think there does need to be some changes to the mission statement, to the vision statement and guiding principles, because that will be a lead-in to what the goals and implementation measures are going to be. And of course, and I questioned it when we had our meeting at the high school, highway streets will be well maintained. You know, they weren't well maintained over 20 years ago, and if we think there's a nirvana regarding roads, that's not going to happen. And in today's record, somebody here showed the Sacramento Bee. Oh, that was jails. Same stories. But it had to do with the federal highway funds being depleted. We have not done the second half of the road impact fee for Calaveras County. Shame on us for not doing that. I appreciate the Economic Council going from highways and streets will be well maintained and well connected to adequately funded. Again, whatever that means. But they did add in new development countywide will provide sufficient revenues for infrastructure adequate to cover the cost of new development. Now, I understand where Supervisor Walensky's going with 2 houses, but in 2 more years there might be 1 more house, and in 5 or 10 years there might be 2 more houses. And so what's 2 houses, and what's 1 house, and what's 2 houses? We have a cumulative impact. Now, I'm dealing with that also in my district. I'm calling them cute roads. And that came from the economic summit that we had. How much do we want to change the character of an area? Well, as we grow, at some point, the character's going to have to change. And this document has got to deal with what that's going to be like in 25 and 30 years from now. In terms of just, and why I'm concerned about it, is we just recently raised the fees in the building department, and I've already gotten complaints, as I'm sure all the supervisors have, because we're having bad times. How could we do it? Well, which pocket are we going to take it out of? Are we going to take it out of the general fund to pay for a new house or a new commercial building? Or is the person who builds the house, who builds the commercial center, going to pay for that? So it's a marriage on the vision statement needs to be where the public wants us to go. At the same time, I'd like to look back in 10 years at the general plan and see that it's done what we've wanted it to do. So it's really that marriage between the dream and the reality. So it's like the word that the economic people talked about, and I think Supervisor Tryon, financial sustainability. I would sure like to know what the word sustainability means. I don't know what financial sustainability needs. I don't know what timber harvest sustainability means. I don't know what open space sustainability means. To me, that means you can move it over and over again. So I'm concerned about the language that we also use. Just a second, got my notes. Oh, and Mr. Segali, Feeney Park does have some public money involved in it. I just thought I'd clarify that for you. Anyway,
so it's about to get more.
So it's the dream versus the reality, and for the most part, I'll go with the vision statement. I guess I'd like to see some massaging because I think it's got to be a lead-in to where the goals, principles, and implementation measures are. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Thomas.
Are you ready for this? I've been thinking a lot about where we've been and where we're going with this effort, and the phrase that keeps coming back is the law of unintended consequences. And let me explain what I mean by that. On page 7 of this Issues and Opportunities report, there's a statement that talks about, in many rural counties, weak regulations have allowed a sprawling pattern of land use that disperses houses along rural roads, fragments open space, and creates nuisances for working landscapes. Talks about dogs and cats and conflicts with ag. And then it summarizes that paragraph by saying, in particular, the general plan update can direct growth toward existing communities instead of allowing low-density development in open space areas. Now, I would submit to our consultants and our planning staff and our fellow Board of Supervisors, what is wrong with Rancho Calaveras? I see hands of people that live in Rancho Calaveras. Do you want to go back and reverse time and put it back to the cattle ranch that it once was? I mean, I think that in large measure, our county, the fabric of the county as I drive around, I think it's a fabulous place. It's a mixture of housing opportunities that I don't know whether it's unique in all the world, but it certainly is a very desirable place to live, in my view, because of its diversity. Now, prior to my coming on the board, there was a moratorium in place on zone changes in this county, and I think that mere fact that there was a moratorium caused an unnecessary restriction on people's ability to develop properties. I think that it's really very interesting that Supervisor Tryon talks about how important it is to have property rights maintained. But we got rid of the moratorium, but we still have a policy that's almost a year old, adopted back in November of 2007, that prohibits. Not prohibits, but it discourages the ability of people to come in with proposals to subdivide lands in this county. Unless you have water and sewer, you're essentially told, don't even come talk to us, don't submit an application, because we're going to recommend to the Board of Supervisors that it be denied unless it's 40 acres in size. Now, getting back to the phrase of unintended consequences, if that's what this county wants, if this is what this particular Board of Supervisors wants, is for us to draw the line in the sand and say that back in November that we're not going to have any more development in the future like we've had in this county, then I guess that's where we're going. But I personally think that we're cutting off our nose to spite our face to prohibit people from coming forward and exercising their property rights if they've got a 20-acre parcel and they want to create 4 or 5 acre parcels. I think that we shouldn't disenfranchise them and say, no, we used to do that, but we're not going to do it anymore. We had a watershed moment last week. On the consent calendar, we approved final recordation of a subdivision up in Big Trees subdivision, about 5 parcels up there, 1-acre parcels on public water, but on septic, that without a change, without a relaxation of some of these policies that we're heading just headlong into, that type of rural sylvan landscape will never be developed again in this county. It'll have to be on sewer, and it'll have to be on water, and it'll be on 7,000 square foot lots. And if that's what you want, great. I'm not going to support that because I don't think that that's what this county is all about. I think that there's a contradiction in that the pounding of the fists and stuff, but we have to have property rights, but we're not going to allow the subdivision of anything less than 40 acres. It doesn't ring true in my head that that's not a rational juxtaposition of thoughts. I would like to see, I haven't wrestled with it sufficiently here, but the vision statement, I think that there should be some intermixing of the economic vitality of the county, the need for our decisions to be guided by an overriding objective of economic vitality. It talks about productive resources and physical beauty of the landscape and all that stuff, but I can't quite visualize what it needs to say, but it needs to contain another thought. So anyway, I'd just like to have you think about Blue Lake Springs, Big Trees subdivision, Copper Cove Rancho, and we've heard about, a number of people have said that this is a dream. Well, I would submit to you that the very short distance between a dream and a nightmare. I don't want this county under my watch to be exclusive, unending view sheds of rooftops. I like very much the community of La Contenta. It's very, very dense. However, it's graded with the undulating topography that's there. It's brilliantly done. If we, I want to say this again and again and again, you folks should be careful what you wish for when you say no more subdivision unless you've got sewer and water. We've got very sophisticated septic systems that will do their job perfectly on if we have sufficient soils. I know because I've experienced this in my district where the planning staff is dissuading people from doing the infill projects where you've got a 1 acre of ground. I can climb into the holes and I can't see the top of the, the profile holes. I can't see the top of it. The unbelievable soils that are ideally suited for the installation of scientifically valid septic systems, and we're closing the door on the people's ability to develop there. I don't think it's right, and I certainly don't think, from my own standpoint, that it's consistent with my own philosophy of being consistent with myself, because I live on a 2-acre parcel that's got public water and sewer. Pardon me, septic, and it functions fine. I'm not hurting anybody by living there, and I feel very self-conscious about me sitting on a board that absolutely precludes anybody's ability to live on the same type of property that I live on. Where is the legitimacy of that? So anyway, let's just not close the door completely, gentlemen and ladies, on what we have enjoyed in this county in the past. For the last 40 years, we've got 40, the assessor tells me that we've got about 40,000 individual lots or parcels that have been created in this county since its beginning. At the rate that we have sort of just suddenly stopped everything down. Mr. Pitto, are you doing any 5-acre projects anymore? Okay. Anyway, I've said enough.
Turn green, Roger? No.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes my comments, and are there any tomatoes out there?
Apparently not. I'll take my turn now. Regarding number one, I think that, as I stated before, I was pleasantly surprised that the document did reflect, at least the meetings that I went to, the public input, and I very much appreciated that. That's not always been my experience in contracting. Often we get kind of a template or a boilerplate language that no matter what people said, it comes back the same. That was certainly not the case here. I do believe you listed and categorized pretty well. I've got a few comments on that, but most of them will be under number 3, issues and opportunities that are missing or have not been characterized properly. First, I'd like to compliment the first 5 in OCOC and the Child Care Council and others because they really did look at that language and found things that were just not quite accurate, and I think it's probably reflective of things that people said in meetings, but it doesn't square up with the history, which is quite rich here. There has been a 10-year effort to put those issues in a strategic plan, and I want to make sure that we capture that, so I welcome that input, and I want to make sure that people read that carefully. The language as written looks pretty darn good, but I think in terms of your particular way of writing things, you may want to look at that carefully and maintain some dialogue with the folks who have brought all those issues forth for the last 10 years. On economic development, I do believe that we need to make that a priority. You cannot pay for the stuff we dream of without having some significant and a robust economy. Interesting thing about the human condition, we have certain advantages over other species. We have deductive logic, capacity for it. We have strategic thinking. We actually have opposable thumbs, so we can actually do some of the things that we think about. But the problem that we've had, and I want to respond to some of the comments that have been made here, we keep on saying somehow a mythical market or a adherence to one set of principles. For instance, property rights being the most important and overarching thing and little else would matter. That has been tried. And the use of deductive logic and strategic thinking should at least allow us to take a look at the places where we have failed. And where I think we've failed, there's places where we have not responded to the true wishes of people who live in places to build the kind of communities, maintain the kind of communities, value the kinds of communities that brought people here or kept them here to begin with. Let me give you an example. The San Joaquin area, which now is essentially a massive set of towns and subdivisions ranging from nearly as well, even as far south as Fresno all the way up now to the lower Sacramento Valley, has built on the best ag land in the world. Now, I'm assuming that most people intend, at least in this generation, to continue eating. I also assume that enough of us care about the next generation to want to give some consideration and use our deductive logic and strategic thinking to provide for that kind of thing. And I don't think the market served ag well. Ag was not the way to make money, not as much as subdividing and building homes. We built homes that were far away from where people worked. They commuted into the bay. We jammed up our roads and had to build first 2 lanes, then 4 lanes, then 6 lanes, now 8 lanes, and they're still jammed. We didn't figure out how to get people from one place to another. We didn't take a look at the kind of morning that you spend when you have to go to work and you're a mom and you want to drop your kids off somewhere. You've got preschool, you've got school, you've got shopping, you've got work, and we managed to put those in so many different places over such a length of time that people who are professing to believe in family values actually constructed communities that are destructive inherently to those values. And I don't think that humankind gets to smart arrangements without thinking them through. And I would hope that we would not denigrate a process of coming together using democracy, which is the other piece that I'm hoping we'll consider here, that people have expressed themselves, hundreds of people have expressed themselves to us about what they'd like to see. This doesn't mean that we take other people's property or that we impose a set of values, that a majority imposes a set of values on minorities. What it says is that we owe it to one another to take a look at what has happened across California, find a way to learn from the mistakes, benefit from the successes, and shape our future in a way that makes sense for those of us who live here. It's simple. It's not all the impositions and the nasty takings that people sometimes infer. It is simply providing people an opportunity, which this process has done, by the way, to let their feelings be known and try to put together as close to a consensus plan as we can arrive at. Now, here's what I saw maybe missing a little bit from this. I actually use the word sustainable in economies, and I think I'm using deductive logic and historic review to decide that, number one, a several-year gold rush that had a few years of boom and 100 years bust was probably not the thing to put all your economic eggs in that basket. And I think we repeated that with a timber-based economy and put all our eggs in that basket, and then the mills closed and we were just shut out, and parts of this county still suffer from the results of that failure to plan a more diverse arrangement. And now we have found that our main economy is based on home building. And yet the housing market gave us a rather rude jolt, and we're suffering from that. So when I talk about a diverse economy, I'm talking about taking a look at the assets that we have, trying to build not an arrangement that's colonial in nature, that is, we give away our resources cheap and we buy back manufactured or value-added goods expensive, and that we pay for massive transportation costs because of the distances traveled, but that we try to shorten that and diversify. That we do things here that we're capable of, that we use our resources wisely, that we use our deductive logic and planning capabilities to encourage the economic development in places where it makes sense, where you've got infrastructure, and identifying the places that will not, for instance, pave over prime ag to build a plant, but a place that makes sense to do that. And part of the planning process, in my view, has to identify the places in this county where economic development is suitable, what kinds of things that we can accomplish, and that's land use. You know, people say, well, what does economics have to do with land use? Well, everything. Because if we're not telling people where it's good to do, and if we're not providing incentives, and I think that's another, when we talk about implementation measures, we have to try to give incentives to the things that we have some consensus that we want to see happen. I've not yet heard one public input that we want to be pathetically poverty-stricken. All right? Nobody has risen to that, ethic. But I hear so many arguments about who's keeping this from happening. And what I'm saying is that two things are a problem. One is we haven't thought through the infrastructure and how to afford it and target it to places that could receive this kind of activity. And we have truly failed to think in broad and integrated terms with, again, I'll use the word sustainability in mind. We cannot put everything we've got into one portion of the economy. We have to build a diversified economy that capitalizes on our assets, which include natural resources, includes recreation and tourism, includes agriculture, includes mining, and includes what I hope will be a robust retail economy and some form of light manufacturing. Land use should determine where that goes, and that's, to my way of thinking, not entirely emphasized here enough. Secondly, and we've already had the presentation, I think the Public Works Department put it succinctly and effectively, and I would hope that their input would be adequately responded to. So essentially, my answer to number 3 is 3 things. Better approach to and a more integrated to the rest of it on the economy and economic development. Careful attention to infrastructure infrastructure and roads and circulation, water, sewer, because we can talk all we want about our dreams, but when you don't have that stuff, it's a pipe dream. It's a joke. I also want, and finally, the discussion to revise the social infrastructure so that it's accurate and reflective of the work of literally, again, hundreds of people who over the past decade actually created a good master plan for considering that in relation to land use and other aspects. We should be mindful of their good work and use it. Finally, I agree with the supervisors who've already spoken that it is not economically viable to spread our particular form of growth, to take the Los Angeles model and try to apply it to the foothills. That having some densities in infill in places actually does, when you look at the errors of other places and the cost of trying to maintain a road, when somebody asks what's wrong with Rancho, what's wrong with Rancho is $19 to $38 being paid for the maintenance of roads that have 1 to 5 acre separations. It doesn't add up. And the 20 acres in Diamond 20 and Circle 20 and Bar 20, even less so, less viable for the infrastructure. So let's use our advantages. Let's take our deductive logic, our strategic thinking, take a look at where other people and other communities have failed and where they have been successful, and put those things into our general plan with implementation measures that will actually accomplish our goals. I know that that's the next, that we're looking at options and that we're going to get into implementation measures later, but I want to make sure that we never decouple our dream from some grounded realities, and that's why I appreciate the input that we've had today. I also agree with Mr. Segala on an issue that I think is important, which is if you read our current general plan, it is written sometimes in techno speak that is quite hard for the average member of the Board of Supervisors to understand, and my guess is that probably translates into a lot of baffling confusion in the population at large, not to mention that it self-contradicts a few times. And one other matter, which is I hope that there will be some mention here of all of the, well, let me rephrase it. This is never going to be a one-size-fits-all county. When Supervisor Thomas says that he believes that La Contenta is a good rural dream, I can tell you that if you were to say that in Sheep Ranch, you would be damaged goods by the time the meeting was over. That doesn't make Supervisor Thomas wrong. What it means is that each of us has our own visions and dreams, and that we need to acknowledge that there are going to be different outcomes in different towns, for things like roads even. And all the way through, densities, what's preserved, what kind of open space is there, if any, what level of recreation or other things are important to designate for a town. These are so critical that we acknowledge not that we have to fight each other about something like that. I come with my own views about rural life, and so do many people up in the far corners of this county have a very different idea and are actually repulsed by the dreams of some other people. It's when we stop fighting about it and acknowledge the ability for people to make their own decisions using democracy, deductive logic, and strategic thinking to shape their future in their own ethic and their own sensibilities. That's not a taking, folks. That's called community. We have done this for centuries, and we should learn once again to respect one another for our differences and allow processes that bring us together for some conclusions in consensus. That's all I have to say, but look at those community plans and let's make sure that that's mentioned in here so that we don't once again be working on one side while the other is left in conflict with whatever our product ends up in in the general plan. Enough said, probably more than enough said.
Mr. Chair, I just want to say that I've heard the massive connotations here, just questions, and they are being answered. I've been enjoying this session very much, but I haven't heard any massive connotations.
Oh, I wasn't speaking of anything that came up here. I'm talking about the ambiance which has characterized our last several years of planning, where there have been quite a few comments that have been in this meeting, on the blogs, et cetera. I think we've failed to be as respectful universally. But this has been, as you say, a perfectly fine meeting with good questions and good input.
I think we've got the information. We'll get together and be bringing materials back to you, and obviously the public is going to have an opportunity to review all of that.
Post it on the website?
We'll post whatever we've got wherever we can and make sure we get all the public input we can as we get through this process. Our emphasis, quite honestly, is to keep our contract on track, and if I can, I'm going to push it even harder to keep it, perhaps even get ahead if we can do that. So this is so important to the county, we want to keep it moving.
Would we like to review how long it was going to take us to do the general plan?
If you want a translation, that is the supervisor who suggested that it would be ludicrous to think we could complete it in 2 years and suggested a 3-year. Just for the record, she turned out to be more than right.
And she just can't get over it.
and is reminded. Let me ask one final thing on this. This is a draft. I'm assuming that you now have all the input, both public and Board of Supervisors, and that you will propose a final revision. Is there any further input in any way, or do you expect to have a final version to us, and if so, when?
Yeah, I think we have adequate input. We'll work with staff in terms of the timing.
Did you want community plans part of the vision statement? Because they have to be part of the plan anyway.
Right. I wanted that. That was part of my conveyance, is that I was hoping that there would be a reference about the integration of community plans to this.
I mean, because that's mandated.
Yes.
So I wasn't clear.
I just thought it was missing.
So you want the vision?
Just a mention.
The final wording, as always, is with the adoption of the plan.
Yes,
Okay.
I assume as much.
There's an opportunity to change till the last gavel falls.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your patience. Can't wait to see what you make of this. We throw a lot of looks at you, don't we?
If we could have just a 2-minute recess while we clean up.
Yeah, we're going to take a 5-minute recess, and we will resume with item number 9, discussion and possible action regarding introduction of an ordinance to establish regulations for activities on Tulloch Reservoir. Another exciting moment. Okay, we will resume this meeting, and we are now turning our attention to item number 9, which is the discussion possible action regarding the introduction of an ordinance to establish regulations for activities on the Tulloch Reservoir. And we had considered this some time ago. It's come back to us with some revisions, and I imagine Director Selman will inform us on that.
Actually, Mr. Chairman, we are prepared to we're prepared to recommend that your board move forward with the the introduction and continue the matter as it was originally written. We've worked through the language without change. We believe we have got a better understanding of how this whole thing is working, how it'll integrate. There is no need to further clarify. Clearly, the sheriff's duties are going to be to those. We believe we have a common understanding that the other duties are still reserved to each appropriate agency. There's no question about that in our mind. So
we're not being impinged upon in any way, as we
do not believe so. And if there are corrections, then this is your opportunity. But I think unless you have a language issue, we're okay with it.
All right. Well, there were a couple of supervisors who had previously expressed some concerns and may have questions on it. Let's see whether those remain. Any questions for Director Selman on this document?
Yes.
Maria beat me. She's not clear.
Oh, you go try on.
No, I'm going after you.
I wonder who those two supervisors were. Rita first.
Page 2, number H, dock. We kept getting confused when we had that last project about dock and slip. And so one dock could have 5 slips. So I just thought, do we want to have a definition for slip or dock, paren, slip, so forth? That's, are they used interchangeably? And I just felt like we should address it because to me a dock and a slip are 2 different things.
Well,
that was page 2, number
Right.
H. Page 2.
Yes, it is the definition of the dock is the structure that boats would come up and either attach to or be placed upon. The number of boats that you can attach to that dock is not regulated in this portion of the ordinance. That's reserved to Tri-Dam. So their rules would specify the size of the dock or the shape of the dock and how it is actually
the capacity of the dock.
Capacity of the dock and so on. So as an example, a commercial dock that has 25 slips is still a dock. A residential dock that might be able to hold or more 2 boats is still a dock. So the dock is the structure. The number of available parking places, if you would, is not directly regulated by this ordinance.
But that was the issue when we had the last project.
That was an issue, if you would, that was to be resolved by Tri-Dam rather than the county. We talked about having a certain number of dock facilities, and we recognized that there was a debate as to how many parking places, slips, whatever you want to call it, should be allowed there. But that is not something that this ordinance would propose to regulate one way or the other.
But we did on that last project. We said there will be 32 or 40, whatever, slip parking spaces.
Right.
So we did.
But they're contained on about 4 docks.
So,
And they're still docks.
okay.
I understand your concern, but it's really a different discussion.
We spent a lot of time talking about it, and okay.
Supervisor Calavera, are you suggesting that we try to resolve those types of issues that have come up to us so far?
Mr. Selman's telling me to back off.
Well, I'm just asking you whether you intend to back off or whether we'd like to take him off.
And you're listening to
him? Parking spaces are not the issue, just the structure itself is called a dock. There is no definition of size. I mean, I understand what you're saying. I just know the quandary we were in on that last issue. Okay. I'll let you have that one, Bob. Doesn't mean I'm going to let you have any more. Page 4. Under general provisions, okay, I don't know how, I'm going to just take number B. A permit issued by the county and an encroachment permit by the Tri-Dam project. Okay, it doesn't really say who comes first. Then you go down to D, towards the bottom. Facilities installed in the FERC project boundary, concurrently reviewed, etc., by county and Tri-Dam prior to installation. The county shall not issue a permit without prior approval from the Tri-Dam project. So if we go up to B, a permit will be issued by the county after an encroachment permit's been issued by Tri-Dam?
We would functionally, although it doesn't have to work exactly, we would look at concurrent permitting, basically. so that if someone were to apply for a building, for a house in an area that included a dock, we would, at the same time we are circulating our projects for review, we would make sure that they were circulated through Tri-Dam, and hopefully we would come to concurrence before we would in fact issue the final permits to actually start construction. I think we need to get that sort of agreement with them so there is at least an opportunity to make sure we are not in conflict. If we reach a point of absolute impasse, I'm either going to recommend that we issue our permits and they solve their problems with Tri-Dam, or we'll bring it forward to the board if it's directly as a problem with this ordinance. I think that the purpose is a working arrangement. We don't want to get each other working against each other.
But here's the applicant who's hanging out there and wondering, well, who has final authority? And I don't think that we are. I think we should be addressing that. And I just felt like there were red flags here when I read this, and I guess I'd like to see it, for me, worked out prior to an ordinance when I consider the trauma drama that we have at Lake Tulloch.
Because so many of these are going to be very, very particularly based questions. You know, the question of how many slips should be allowed on a dock, or how far out can that dock be, or other matters that are going to be very specific to the particular case. I don't think you can write an ordinance that's going to address those issues. I think you've got to write it generically enough that says we have a process in place. If there's a problem, just like any other permit, there's an appeal right, there's a process to make sure that you are not hung up forever and move forward.
Okay, we just spent a lot of time on a project down there. And then we said, okay, we've done our part. You now have to go to Tri-Dam to see if you can get their approval to do what it is you want to do. And, I mean, not right, wrong, good, or bad. I mean, I would feel as the applicant very frustrated by that process. Now, and true, I mean, that was larger than maybe most we might deal with, except that we're going to move to, I don't know, the North Shore or wherever. I mean, it could come up again. I just had concerns about the frustration level of
my hope would be that this ordinance would encourage both agencies to have a greater concept of consecutive, or not consecutive, concurrent processing of these permits. I mean, I think that's the emphasis we have to get to.
Okay.
You know, there should not be such a difference between what Tri-Dam or Calaveras County should be asking for, that we have to have totally separate processes. And hopefully this is a step towards encouraging that.
It isn't, I don't read it that way, but you can have that one. A facility installed prior to 79 shall be considered grandfathered. What about post-1979? Because we have had facilities go in post-79. So what are we going to do? Are we or Tri-Dam going to tell them to move it, reduce it, the seawall?
Anything that is not considered grandfathered would be subject to the appropriate evaluation and corrections. So if it's something that is a matter of simply correcting because it's an improperly constructed facility or someone, that would be the first choice. I suppose.
So who's going to do that? Is Tri-Dam, or our code enforcement?
It would depend upon what was the nature of the alleged violation and who actually has jurisdiction.
I mean, remember the issues we had with all the seawalls? And
yep. So if you have matters of construction where it is, if you would forgive me, the same as every other zoning or other violation we have. There are pieces of it that we can deal with because they are building matters or they're zoning matters.
There are other pieces, such as a sanitation facility that's failing, that somebody else has jurisdiction. The appropriate jurisdiction has to deal with the particular problem as it's presented to them. Uh-oh, she's got a smile.
Okay, I mean, I have to say, I don't like getting this today and making a decision on this today. And it's a good thing that I only had 5 minutes to look at it, and you and I'd probably be here a little longer. Page 6, number C. That wasn't clear.
Which C?
Where are you?
There's 3 Cs.
Oh, I'm sorry, thank you. 2010-170 speed limitation. If this is all under the jurisdiction of the Reservoir Authority, why is it in our ordinance?
Excuse me?
On page 6, Bob,
Right,
under
right.
speed limitation,
Right.
number C or number B, it's not under our jurisdiction, so why would it be in our ordinance?
The setting of the speed limit may not be under our jurisdiction, but I believe the enforcement could very well be under our jurisdiction of either the county sheriff or the county or Tuolumne. So the enforcement actually is under
That's
our
why we
jurisdiction.
want a decibel ordinance. Yes, okay, thank you.
I thought it was a luminary ordinance.
And you guys all want a noise ordinance so we can be decibel cops.
Turn that light out.
Yeah, I'd like that. Okay, that's it, Bob. I do appreciate on page 7, under enforcement, it says his and her deputies. That was appreciated.
That's sweet.
Other comments from the board?
Mr. Chairman, I don't want to waste any more time on this. I just wanted to remind the board that this ordinance in its entirety was adopted months ago by Tuolumne County. And the only reason for it being here today is just to have our county approve it so that it's identical, so that when Blaine and his boat enforcement officers are out there alongside the Tuolumne contingent, that they're all operating under the same rule book. It's just simple as that. So that's why we're here.
Supervisor Tryon, did you have a comment?
Yes, I do. Just a quick clarification. Your title says adopting rules and regulations for those areas of the county of Calaveras, including Tulloch Reservoir and bordering lands. It makes it sound like there are more areas than Tulloch Reservoir. Are we addressing something more than Tulloch Reservoir here?
No, sir. That was probably my mistake when I did the title. I got a little carried away.
Okay.
We can certainly clean that
The
up.
one exception I take in here and was on page 4, item B. I don't mind A, B, and C. To me, those are fine. But where you say the county shall not issue a permit without prior approval from the Tri-Dam project. So I guess the question becomes, who approves something first? Normally what we do is we approve something and say, you can do this subject to sewer, water, an encroachment permit from Public Works, or in this instance, approval by Tri-Dam.
Correct.
And that's basically what we did with the last project, which to me is sort of the normal course of events. We said, we approve this, it meets our rules and requirements, but it's subject to getting a Tri-Dam approval and or FERC as the case may be. Now you're saying in here the county shall not issue a permit without prior approval from the Tri-Dam project. Now are you saying they need to go to Tri-Dam and get approval before we entertain a project?
Not before we entertain it. I would suggest
That's what it says, shall not issue a permit.
Well,
without prior approval.
I guess okay. The way I interpret this language is that you can apply for a permit, and we will process it, and that would include getting all of those agencies that would need approval. You get your building permit when we issue it to start construction. Okay, we may do plan checks, we may send it to environmental health for review of the sanitation, and you should not be beginning construction until you have each of those approvals in hand. And that's what we're saying, is that we would not authorize construction until we had their approval.
The county will process but not issue a permit without prior approval from or something.
So we can approve the project at the county level, however, they can't start construction without...
That's not the way I read this. I mean,
no, you're right. I understand that, but that's what you want to say.
All right. Can you say something that the county will process but not issue a final permit without prior approval from the Tri-Dam project? I mean, that's like you have to go out and get approval before...
I would defer to council unless, I mean, to me, that it is
that's what you're saying to me.
That's what I am saying. We would interpret it anyway. So if that's okay with council,
I agree. It would be better to word it so that it doesn't lend itself to interpretation.
I was going to suggest a small change in that they say the county may process, but will not issue.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
Will process but not issue?
No, may process.
May process but
will
not...
not issue a final permit without prior approval from the Tri-Dam project. That's like saying without getting your Caltrans encroachment permit or a county encroachment.
We need wording that will say we may approve a project at the county level, but construction
it has to wait
cannot commence until other required permits are in place. Something of that nature.
That, to me, is normally how we process an application.
That is certainly the way I would have interpreted this ordinance for administration purposes. I mean, the idea is you get concurrent approval.
Okay, well, you get with county council and get...
Well, if I've got that language. If you include that in this, I would suggest that could be included as a minor correction and leave it as a first reading if you're going to introduce it.
Okay, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. Let me just ask you another question, a follow-up to the last project. What did Tri-Dam do with the last project?
I don't know that that's been resolved yet, to tell you the truth. I haven't heard.
Okay. That's all the comments or questions I have.
Any other comments or questions before proceeding? I have one myself if there's nobody else. I'd like to echo what I think was the thrust of Marita's remarks. I think it's very difficult, as witnessed the previous consideration, when we've got two agencies responsible for permitting any number of things in one place. And that even if we aren't operating off the same documents, and this is a good effort to get on one page with this, but it's my view that it would behoove us to begin to at least try to have joint processes. It would expedite it, it would deconfuse it, and that if we could find ways to merge process and do it, or at least do it side by side and concurrently, it would have a lot better outcome than the very awkward discussions that occurred over the last project. So even if we're not putting that in here, and knowing that Tri-Dam is present among us, I would strongly urge the staffs of both to see what we can do to bring this together a little bit in a more seamless version of the fractured stuff that we did last time. That said, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, this is a public hearing, I do believe.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, it is a public hearing, and actually, wait a minute, it's not a public hearing. This is introduction. Yeah, this is introduction of, as I understand it, there is no public hearing, although I would be most interested if there is anybody from the public that would like to comment on this agenda item. Discretion being the better part of valor.
Thank you.
All right.
You're watching the clock, too.
All right. We are being urged to a conclusion here. Would anybody like to make the motion?
I'll move this ordinance, and am I to understand we're changing one word in the document?
Why don't we say as amended, as paragraph D, page 4, as
Two words,
amended.
may, take shall not out and say may issue a permit.
May process.
Right?
Was it may process, but not...
May process, but not issue.
More than a word, but it doesn't,
Okay.
it's just a clarification of how it's being interpreted.
We'll consider that an amendment to it, and the motion should be to approve as amended and waive.
Approve as amended, yes.
Introduction, yeah, okay, an amendment.
So there is such a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? That's 5-0, and we have action. And hopefully good follow-up on the coordination of effort.
I think you guys should, Tri-County should buy one of those townhouses out over the water and reserve it for the Board of Supervisors. On order.
Okay, we now have that most exciting part of the agenda, a review of correspondence, reports, and various matters of concern. I'd like to start with Supervisor Triad.
I have one item. I will not be able to attend the LAFCO meeting next Monday. I have a candidates forum in Murphy's, so I don't know who my backup is, but Marilyn, you might check and notify my backup that if they are able to make that meeting, that would be a good thing. And would you please call John Van Waugh and let him know I won't make it.
I believe that LAFCO alternate is Marita Callaway, Supervisor Callaway.
Well, she'll have to be the candidate.
It's not my district.
Sole item for correspondence?
That's all I have.
All right. Supervisor Thomas.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I want to pass out a couple of things here just to, this is more in the realm of an announcement. I've been talking about this a little bit in the past. You recall that I mentioned a couple of meetings ago about some computer training that I've been working hard to get here in the county. This tells all about it. This will be going out in the papers and on the radio soon, talking about this organization called Zero Divide, which incidentally is, if you look up on the internet about Zero Divide, they're an organization that believes in building and strengthening the capacity of underserved communities to use emerging technologies to influence public policy and business practices. I have a long-standing friendship with a gentleman in Stanislaus County named Keith Boggs, who has been doing this training in Stanislaus County for about 7 years now. So because of my involvement in that California Emerging Technologies Fund and their proposal to expand the use of broadband technology in our county, a significant component of that effort is education. So this is the first thrust of that. I spoke with our CAO about this earlier. This will require the execution of a simple facilities use agreement with the Bret Harte High School computer lab. There are 40, I think that there are 40 terminals that this would be available to any citizen of Calaveras County. We're also going to be advertising it in Tuolumne County. So sign up early and reserve your spot. And I'll be going to the LAFCO meeting next Monday. And that concludes my report for today.
Is that technology class open to Luddite supervisors? There being 2 of us, I believe, on the board.
Yeah.
All right. Real opportunity there, Tom.
For you.
There are
All the way to the 21st century.
All right.
At the risk of being overly redundant here, there are 35 sessions. They start, they're Wednesday, well, the first one starts on Thursday, but after that there'll be Wednesday, Thursday nights, Saturday mornings. So there's 35 sessions, and it looks like that you could conceivably get some pretty powerful skills there. That
Do you have to go to all of them?
I don't know the answer to that. I would think that it would be certainly in your interest to go to as many as possible. So.
Well, yeah, but I mean, if it's the same class just taught 35 times?
Of course not. Look at the topics.
For more information, call.
I was just wondering, you go to Delta College calendar and it says it meets every Tuesday for 10 weeks.
Thank you.
So that's...
I got more information than they didn't have to call.
No, this is starting with, you can see the subject matter about what's in the box, getting to know what the components do and the lingo, and then ending up with learning how to use your databases, Access 1 and 2. I would really like to know how to do that. So.
All right, well, thank you for bringing that to our attention. I know there's some of us who could use a primer on that. Supervisor Callaway, any announcements?
Tryon could go for all 35 classes.
I think you guys should pay me $100 each for each class that I attend.
I agree.
That would be $400 a class. I'll try to make it.
I should institute a remedial version of this and then make the...
But you can take it out of the bus subsidies. Bob's got a great idea there.
You always wanted to say $4 out of the bus subsidies.
All right, we are way off topic. Supervisor Callaway, would you like to announce where you might be this week?
I have the California State Association of Counties Board meeting in Sacramento. That's the only board-appointed one I have left, though I'll do Monday. But on the 19th, Steve and I have a child support meeting at 10 a.m. I have to be in Sacramento for the water plan. If somebody could go, it's going to be an important meeting. So if one of you could let me know. I think it's in Jackson.
Actually, this one's at CalWorks, and it's going to be at 10 a.m. that morning.
At 10 a.m. at CalWorks.
At the...
on the 19th.
In the lower conference room.
So if one of you could please let me know, I'd appreciate it.
Why don't we settle that right now? Can anybody back up Marita on this?
I gapped on that. What was the meeting?
This is the Joint Powers Act. It's family support.
Child support.
Child support. Central Sierra Child
support.
I can't.
You can?
I cannot.
You cannot. Russ, can you?
I have an obligation that day.
Tom, can you?
I'll be able to.
I will talk to Kathy.
Yeah.
But you'll have to be there.
I will.
Okay.
It's in the calendar. All right.
Thank you. I just want to, this weekend, the 13th is the Ebbets Pass National Scenic Byway Celebration. If all of you would like to have some fun, starting in Arnold and going to Markleyville. There'll be events all over the pass.
May I bring my chainsaw and cut down some of those trees?
No, but you know what, Tom?
In order that we can
on the
have a
road,
sustainable forest with more open space?
on the road to Highlands Lake, you could fill some potholes.
Okay.
That's all, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And dare I ask, Supervisor Claudino?
No, I'm sure Marita's forgotten something, so. That's mean. That's true. Actually, I have nothing to report other than Monday, the day before our next meeting, try to remember the behavioral health has their open house from 11 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon. And they're always happy to have folks stop in there. That's about, the other thing is, last week I mentioned that the senior center was having this chili competition, and the board wondered if that was the board cumulatively or individually were invited to compete, and of course it's individually. So if you other folks really want to wimp out, you have a lot of time. This isn't until October 25th, so you have a lot of time to think up some bogus reason why you can't do that. And in your absence, if you wish, I will put together enough for all of you. Anyway.
We're a green board and we're worried about methane gas.
No, chili and a hot dog are $5, sodas and chips are $2, and for another $1 you get some Beano. So
finally, Tryon comes out against global warming.
Yeah, oh God. But seriously, folks, the senior center here, they operate on almost no money. And what this is they're attempted a fundraiser. They're going to have a car show. Like you say, again, it's October 25th from 9 in the morning till 3 in the afternoon. They're having a little chili cook-off thing, but there's going to be a car show there. The goal is they're trying to raise enough money for a meat slicer, of all things. So that's what they're trying to accomplish. So come on by if you get a chance. Visit with the folks. They'll appreciate it. Get a bowl of chili. Have a good day. October 25th. That's it.
All right, and my schedule involves going to the Sierra Nevada Alliance Conference for Saturday and Sunday, the recovery stuff for behavioral health on Monday from 11 to 2. And I wanted to raise, I'm also going to a non-board sponsored meeting. There are a number of people in District 2 that have put together a meeting with concern. As you know, the grand jury reported that we have issues of coliform spike, levels of coliform in the Middle Fork. And one of the things that people have been talking about is it better to have some alternative forms of for instance, using composting toilets and other things where people are actually now using just a pipe going into a hole. We don't have the ability to permit that stuff in this county, and there's a desire on the part of some people to review some things that might actually be technological advances over what we're doing now but are not currently permitted. It's complicated, and we've talked with environmental health. This will be the first meeting to begin to explore possibilities, but I would imagine something would be brought to this board for review sometime in the next few months on that topic. So we'll see what that's made of then. And that's all I have to report. Oh, yes, I do have one other thing to report. Thank you, Marita. Marita has drafted a letter to the governor.
Out of the way, Marita.
And thinks it appropriate for the chair to sign this, but I want to make sure that the board is comfortable with this. I'll read the letter into the record and then ask whether people are prepared to authorize me to sign it. It says, regarding Assembly Bill 2447, you've heard from CSAC and others on this. Governor Schwarzenegger, the Board of Supervisors of Calaveras County, requests your veto of AB 2447 by Assembly Member Dave Jones relating to denial of approval of subdivision maps in state responsibility areas, SRAs. We are an SRA county. AB 2447 would require us to deny approval of a tentative map or parcel map if it is located in an SRA without substantial evidence of protection. Calaveras County complies with existing fire safety regulations in California building codes for land divisions, and we have additional requirements for secondary or emergency access. We have multiple fire districts in the county whom also part of our process. In addition, we work closely with CAL FIRE on defensible space. AB 2447 does not improve the quality of structural fire protection. Creating defensible space and fuel management, such as fire breaks and thinning on public lands, would greatly increase fire protection. Calaveras respectfully requests your veto of AB 2447. Any views on this?
I support that, and RCRC has taken a very strong position in opposition and is working very hard to see that doesn't happen. I think the sense is it won't happen, but who knows?
All right. Any other board comment before I poll?
There's a typo in that.
Yeah, the whom.
Whom are also.
Yes.
Thank you.
What did Gus say?
There's where it says whom also are part of our process.
Or read it.
No, I gotta go see. Let me see.
You better check.
Oh my God.
So you just look
Sign up for the classes,
You
Marie.
can't say, we have multiple fire districts in the county whom also part of our process.
Fire, so the noun is
Come on.
districts who.
Traumatized by a grammarian in the 5th grade.
You have
We are
to-
not-
Where's the verb?
Shouldn't it be districts that as opposed
Yes.
to personal
It's
pronoun?
multiple
Well,
districts.
because I look at it as people, but you could say that, because frequently you see that one, it should be a who.
I think we should have a study
On the
session.
central paragraph on this line.
Okay, we will make sure it's
We will ask,
grammatically
we will ask,
Multiple fire districts in the county. Also,
if the board polls in favor of this, we will ask staff to correct, to make sure it happens in proper grammar.
I support Russ's editing.
All right.
That which.
I'm going to end discussion and move to a poll at this point, just out of fear of whatever.
What are you going to say?
No, it's just going to be a grammar one.
Yeah, and staff will be asked to correct it.
You correct it.
All right, Russ?
Is Marita going to personally deliver this or what?
No, we will.
Smoke a cigar with the governor out in the tent?
We will send it by mail.
Okay, all right, I'll vote for it, or I approve.
Marita, I'm sure you're there.
Yes.
Yes.
I
Okay.
guess I didn't ask
So I
our
will-
land use department, what do you all think?
It doesn't matter what we think.
You know what? Mr. Taylor, I folded for Mr. Selman on 2 items today on an ordinance.
And
So
she's still
I
not
am-
over it.
Hence his cooperative attitude.
So I
That's
am- So I am interested in what Mr. Selman might think.
You want to put that in the desk? So you have one?
Just an reference.
Can we,
Well, I guess what could be called the spirit of mercy, we will now close this session. We are going into a closed session, which we will have during lunch, and we will reopen at 1:30 with a study session on the Williamson Act and proposed changes in the county policies and procedures regarding it. That will be here. And it will be